Hey you guys, so I apologize for my rough appearance. I've been outside playing in the dirt most of the day, but I wanted to see if I could get a video posted today because I haven't done one this week, but I'm trying. Um, I have had like some issues with sleep this week. There was 2 nights that I didn't sleep at all. It didn't seem like maybe I caught an hour or two, but just really felt like I kind of feel like I'm being attacked spiritually, and I think it's because of some things that I'm trying to walk into that the Lord's called me into. But last night was one of them. I mean, I had like really bizarre dreams, and even when I would wake up, it just felt like this really heavy thing. So it's very appropriate that today I kind of did some studying, extra studying on what the aspect of peace. Regarding the fruit of the Spirit is. So I've been doing the study on Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 and 23 regarding the fruit of the Spirit for, I guess it's been a few weeks now, and we're only up to the third thing. So I apologize that I'm moving slow, but, life happens. So today is peace. So, the verse, it's for the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. Say that 5 times fast. But we're up to the third one, peace. And I think I learned a lot, and actually we'll probably pull more studies out of this that I can do later, just from looking at this and not even spending a ton of time at it, but just because it's what God's speaking to my heart. But I went back and looked at the original word like I usually do, and I'm not going to pronounce it because that's kind of a funny thing that I have been doing, but I'm not going to do it today. But the meaning actually, it kind of broke it down when I was looking at it. And one thing that stood out to me was like the exemption from rage. And so our pastor taught on anger, and he's kind of going through a study on our toxic emotions. And so last week our sermon was on anger. And I think that it's really just kind of funny that, it's time for me to do this study on peace. And I hate that I waited all week to do it, but yeah, the exemption from rage. And so I feel like when we are moving and speaking and doing in the Spirit as He's called us to, according to the Spirit of the Lord, then we are not going to be in that ugly rage. My pastor broke it down as righteous anger and unrighteous anger. And righteous anger is whenever it's something that has to do with basically your either standing up for somebody who's being treated improperly, or for somebody who is maybe kind of downtrodden and things like that. But their situation and the way that this is going on is making you angry. And I think as long as it's a biblical thing, a biblical reason, then you have every right to be angry for that. Also, if you see people speaking something supposedly in the name of Jesus, and it's completely against the word, then that's a reason to be righteously angry. But most of our things are just us being judgmental and selfish, and really a lot of times immature. But I won't spoil that. You need to go listen to it for yourself. Go to vintagechurch.net and listen to the sermon on anger. It's great. But anyway, so as I was looking at this peace aspect, I realized that there are 2 instances where women are specifically spoken to. And since most of you that are watching this are women, then I wanted to share that. So in Luke chapter 7, there is the instance of the woman who a lot of people have thought is Mary Magdalene, but as I studied it, there's not really any conclusive evidence that it was certainly Mary Magdalene. But a woman approached Jesus, and she broke a bottle of expensive fragrant oil and poured it on him. And I think that, everybody was like kind of reprimanding her and saying that she was not right in doing that because it was so expensive and they could have used the finances for something. But what I found interesting was that Jesus received it. It wasn't something that he did, that he went along with what the crowd was saying. Obviously, he's Jesus. He's not going to do that because he's so much wiser than any of us. But at the end, in verse 50, he says to them, but he talks about your faith healing you or forgiving. Because of your faith, you've been forgiven or healed, and then go in peace. And so I thought it was interesting that because of their faith, they received peace. And so it kind of gave me a little bit of a thing in my mind, by walking in faith, we receive peace. And so then again, in Luke chapter 8, just one chapter after that, there's another situation where Jesus is walking, he feels a woman touch him, and he's like, who touched me? And it was the woman who had an issue of bleeding. And he says, you know, your faith has healed you. Go and go in peace. And so it was really, really neat to me to see that, again, it was faith that brought them the peace. You know, it was their faith that brought them healing and forgiveness, but it also brought that peace. The second thing I noticed is that the women were approaching Jesus. Jesus doesn't just come to you and say, hey, I got peace for you, come and get it. You know, you have to go to him. You have to ask for it. You have to receive that. And I think that comes with salvation. It comes with us choosing to walk in the Spirit. And I think that is something that that's not easy to do. I know that I struggle with it every day. You know, there's a lot of days that I sit around and don't do a whole lot. I'm just kind of a lazy person. Or I justify it and say that I need rest. And maybe I do, but, you know, I kind of beat myself up and say that I'm just being lazy and I'm not doing much. But either way, I thought it was interesting that both of these women actually confronted Jesus. They came to him. They approached him. They sought him out. And that was when they received their healing and their redemption, but also their peace. And so I went a little further and looked at John 16, and this is probably where I'll break stuff down further. But in John 16, it's talking about Jesus leaving the world and some of the things that would happen after that, and like some of the persecution that would come. But also it talks about the Spirit that comes, the one that has been promised, is what it says. And while he is the convictor, at the end of that chapter, in chapter 16, is, you know, it talks about the take heart, I've overcome the world, but it also talks about peace. And so I think that peace actually was something that maybe had, like a spiritual peace, was something that maybe had not been experienced in the fullness until after Christ's death and resurrection and the presence of the Spirit coming. And so I'm thankful for that, because I can't imagine like dwelling in this terrible, rotten, sinful world without that Spirit of peace that comes inside us and like dwells within us. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys today. So also, if you have trouble with that, if you are like not really feeling like you are experiencing peace, then don't be afraid to ask for that. I think with all of these aspects of the fruit of the Spirit, I think that we kind of go, okay, well, it should just automatically be happening in us. And maybe it does as we are obedient to the Spirit and surrendered and submitted. But if you don't see evidence of it, then ask God, one, if it's not there, to make it present. Two, if it is there, to make you aware of it. Because sometimes I think that we beat ourselves up and we listen to the voice of the enemy and to our own flesh and to our past guilt and shame, instead of walking in the fullness of his Spirit, which is freedom and which is just his grace and his mercy and his love. And so make sure that we are in that right place. I know I fail so much at that personally. I'm always beating myself up in my head. I'm always like feeling like a failure and feeling like, you know, I'm not good enough, which I'm not, but I have a hard time accepting the love that he gives and the joy and the peace and all of these things that the Spirit's given us. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask him for that. Like, take time, even right now, as you're watching this video, you know, turn it off. Go walk into a place that's completely secluded. If you have to even leave your home and go out in the woods or next to a lake or a river or something like that and get alone, then by all means do so. And then pray and ask God to just pour that peace over you and give you that peace. And if there's something in your heart you haven't surrendered yet, and that's what's keeping you from having that fullness of peace, then ask him to show you what that is, because surrender is like the way to get to any of these things. If we're walking in our own accord, then we're never going to know the fullness of the Spirit in our lives. Okay, that's all I've got for you today. I'll check back with you guys soon. Have a great day.